Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hi-Fi Preschool and Kids Weekly Training Podcast. I'm Isaac, and joined with me today is Rachel and Crystal. We are part of the Hi-Fi publishing team for kids in preschool, and we are so excited to be joining you today. We are on session 3 of the month of May, and can we believe that it is May already? The year is almost halfway gone, but I don't know. I'm excited. It's not almost halfway gone. Crystal's over here shaking her head. Why are you shaking your head, Crystal?
No, I'm shaking my head in disbelief. I'm shaking my head in disbelief. I can't believe how fast. No, that was more like a.
I was like, is my math wrong? Is May not where I think it is in the year? Because that's completely possible also. Well, this week we are going to be talking to kids and preschoolers about how we can tell our neighbors about Jesus as we dive deeper into the truth of, I am here to share Jesus and God wants me to tell people about Jesus. But before we jump into that content, I have a question for you two. So where we live is definitely shapes how we act, what we do, who our friends are. So my question for you today is, what is the best part about where you personally live? And this is fun because we are all over the United States in this group.
We are. So I feel like I have a couple of things. Like, first off, I live in Olympia, Washington. I think I've said that before. I'm about an hour south of Seattle, and I love the Pacific Northwest. Like, I think one of the best parts here specifically is summer. Now, for those of you in the South, we're like almost all the way through May, and I think you're about ready to be to summer. In the Pacific Northwest, summer really doesn't start until halfway through July. But we have the most beautiful summer, I think, in the whole country. It usually doesn't get too high above 80. It's sunny. We have all these beautiful trees. You've got the beach. We've got mountains. We've got a volcano here. I just think it is such a beautiful place. And then the other thing, though, I talk on this podcast a lot about how much I like food. And I just feel like we have a great variety of food here. I love seafood. And so like when I visit my friends in Nashville, I'm like, I don't think I want to eat seafood here because there's no ocean, like there's nothing here. But like when I'm going out to eat where I am, I will get all of the fresh fish because we are right on the coast. And so I love the food, that fresh seafood with where I live.
Crystal, I'm so jealous of your fresh seafood. Being like from Florida and now being in Tennessee that is landlocked. We just got back from vacation and we ate so much fish because we went down to the Gulf shores and we ate so much fish while we were down there. And now we're back and I'm just so sad.
Back to your chicken tenders.
Back to my hot chicken tenders. Here we go. All right, Rachel. Rachel, what is something that is the best part about where you live?
So I live in a small town in Kentucky, and so I think that's one of the things I really like about where I live is the community. So we have fun community activities and traditions that are really fun. Like, for example, yesterday we had a community tradition called the All Campus Sing. And so the whole community comes out to the university and participates in this like almost festival-like thing where everyone sings. And the different campus organizations perform these like dances and singing numbers that they have practiced for a long time out on the steps of one of the buildings, and everyone just comes out to cheer them on and enjoy. And it's just really, really fun.
That's so much fun. I love where you are in Kentucky. I spent a summer there doing camp and it's so much fun. Such a cool area. I'm actually I live in Middle Tennessee. I'm also in a small town. And my favorite thing about my little small town is we have like a little town square. And the first Fridays that we have down there are so much fun. I mean, the whole community comes out. My wife and I sometimes will walk our dog down to the town square. And it's just so cool to see like the whole community pour out. We have vendors, we have food trucks. Our church always has a booth. And honestly, one of the coolest ways that we have invited people to church is actually through this First Friday event, because just people in our community were meeting other people in their community and saying, hey, you just moved here. Do you want to grab coffee? Or, hey, you just moved here and you're looking for a place to come to church. Hey, you just moved here and you want your kids to go to church like you did when you were growing up. Hey, come on. We're inviting you here Sunday. And it has been such a really cool place to not only invite people to church, but build real connections with our neighbors. And that's actually what we are talking about today, is that I can tell my neighbors about Jesus. We're going to be looking at the story of Peter and John and how they helped a lame man. And Crystal called me out 2 weeks ago on how I'm not allowed to say stories are my favorite. So again, I am just very excited to tell this story to kids, because this is so cool to see God's power working through this man, and how much joy, how much enthusiasm, how he was running and leaping and praising God. If you know the old kids song, he was so excited to be healed by Jesus. But so many times we harp on that, and we harp on that moment of healing. But there's a whole nother part of the story that we are actually going to be highlighting this week at Hi-Fi. So, Rachel, would you mind jumping in on what way are we going to be looking at this story this week with Hi-Fi?
Yeah. So I think this is a really fun way to look at it, because I think about the times that I've heard this story before, and we really focus it on the healing of the man. But the way we're going to tell the story this week in Hi-Fi is that the healing is not the main event. The healing was a catalyst for everyone to witness the power of Jesus. And then the people who witnessed it and who heard about it were affected, and many believed in Jesus. And the people could just not stop talking about it because it was just so incredible. And so I think it is such a neat way to look at the story. And it's such a neat story within the truth.
And I really love how in this story, they literally say, we can't stop talking about Jesus. That's such a cool thing. And that is our prayer for our kids, our preschoolers, is that they are so excited that they want to go and tell their neighbors about Jesus, because they just can't stop talking about him. Now, you might have noticed that we have said, hey, we're going to tell my neighbors about Jesus, but we haven't said, hey, I'm going to go into my neighborhood and tell people about Jesus. So Crystal, what is the difference between neighbor and neighborhood, and why is that language really important?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think is kind of small that people may not notice, but I would love the opportunity to speak of why it was a really intentional choice on our part. You'll actually notice oftentimes in Hi-Fi, we don't use the word neighborhood. We will say neighbors, or we will say community. And there's kind of two thoughts behind that. Number one is that we know that we have churches out there who kids don't actually connect with the word neighborhood, because our mindset about neighborhood is I live in a house on a street, and that is my neighborhood. You might even live in a neighborhood that's got a certain name, like my neighborhood is called Deo Vista. And things like that. But we've got kids who are living in urban settings where they're actually in a giant apartment complex. They don't usually call that their neighborhood. They might call it their apartment complex. They might call it their building. Like, I can talk to the people in my building, but they wouldn't say neighborhood when they think about it that way. We've also got kids who are in really, really rural areas. And so they might be living in a house and their neighbor is a mile away. And you wouldn't normally say that person is in my neighborhood. You might not even say they're on my street, like it's just maybe the person that lives closest to me. And so we kind of want to remove that word neighborhood as it is. It's a very suburban word, to make sure that all kids who are at a church that's teaching Hi-Fi will feel like they can connect and relate. But especially in this context as well, we want to include, when kids are thinking about, I can share Jesus with my neighbors, we want them to think about the people that physically live close to them. But we also want them to think about these people who maybe they don't physically live close to them, but they're sort of doing life with. So if you've got a kid who goes to the same grocery store every weekend, and in that grocery store, that there's a clerk there named Catherine, and Catherine knows that kid's name, and every week will say, like, hey, Isaac, I'm so glad to see you today. We want that little Isaac to look up at Catherine and think she's my neighbor. I can share Jesus with her. When you think about kids who really their community is the girls that are on the ballet thing with them. I don't know. I have boys. What do you call it? A ballet squad? Ballet team? I don't know what you call it when you do ballet with people. But like, those girls can think like, these are my neighbors because I see them 3 times a week. I spend a lot of
Mm.
time with them and I can share Jesus with them. So when we change it from neighborhood to neighbors, we're really trying to make it help kids see that it is anybody that I just have this close relationship with in my community, whether it's because we live near each other all the time or it's because we're doing life together.
I love that. And I also love that that means that the snow cone guy down the street from me is also my neighbor. So I need to go more often so I can share Jesus with him. Is that the permission you're giving me, Crystal?
You know what, Music? I think you're going to need to take that up with your wife, Rachel, who I think would have things to say about both the money that you're spending and your sugar intake. So,
No. I mean, well, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. But
no,
I do love
I
that
know.
we can anywhere we are, the people that we meet on a regular basis, whether it's for us as leaders, whether it's the coffee barista, whether it's the person at the snow cone shack, whether it's the person at the grocery store, maybe it's even that family that we just kind of say hi to every single week when we're going into church, but we haven't gotten to sit down and talk to them about their story. We haven't gotten to hear what they are really going through. Those people are also our neighbors. And those are the people that we really, really get to minister to. Those are the people that we get to share Jesus with. And those are the people that we also just get to be a little part of their life and hopefully share that light of Jesus with them. All right, so I have one more question that I kind of want us all to answer together. So what special and unique opportunities do preschoolers and kids specifically have to share Jesus with their neighbors? So how can we give them maybe some specific examples of how they can share Jesus?
You know, one of the things that I think is amazing is that there is a genuine love and appreciation of the innocence of kids, right? You can be sitting out on your porch and there's kids that are playing and there's kind of this sentimental feeling in your heart. You walk into a store and you see a kid holding their parent's hand and there's just this warm feeling in your heart. And there really is like, and I think that's something that the Lord has blessed many of us with, is that we just have this just love and adoration of kids. And what that means is that when kids have something fun to share, when they're willing to speak up, adults often will stop and listen. I think sometimes even neighbors might listen better than families, right? Like if I ride home with my kid and he's talking nonstop the whole way home, I might start to tune him out. But if he walks up to my neighbor to say something, my neighbor is going to want to stop and listen. And so we get to encourage kids that you have something incredible to say, and there's people who want to hear it. And again, like we've sort of talked about this month, it's not just sharing like, you know, Jesus died on the cross for your sins, which don't get me wrong. If we've got a kid who wants to be bold and share that way, like let's please help them practice that and have those opportunities. We can also encourage kids like, hey, so you had a great time today at church. You made this really cool sun catcher. Maybe you could hang it up on your porch. And when neighbors come by, you can say, look at what I made at church today. Or you could even give it to a neighbor. When you go to the store and you see that Catherine clerk again, you can have that opportunity to say, I talked about prayer today. Can I be praying for you? And there is something about kids talking about Jesus that makes adults want to stop and listen, because it's so different than what you would think a kid is going to say. It's so different than the way that kids are often portrayed on TV. And so I just think it's amazing to let them know you have something great to share, and adults are going to want to listen. Friends are going to want to listen.
I want to piggyback off that last comment of like, hey, this is different than how kids are usually portrayed. And I think even the actions that they have are such a witness when they are obeying their parents, when they're listening to what adults have to say, when they're being respectful, like how they act is going to be different than honestly the other kids that may be running through the store or maybe like doing something that they're not supposed to do. So how they act is actually going to be a witness to others. People are going to look at them and say, hey, there's something different about you. What is it? And then that's when they have an opportunity to say, oh, it's because I'm following Jesus and this is how he wants me to obey my parents. This is how he wants me to live, and I can't do it without him. Rachel, what about you? What are some ways that we can encourage kids specifically to share Jesus with our neighbors?
Yeah, I think as you all were talking, I was thinking through two things. One would be to help our kids and preschoolers be mindful of the unique contexts that they have where they can share Jesus. So, at like you said, at dance or at t-ball or soccer, or while they're waiting for the next thing at school and they're able to talk to a friend, they have such a unique opportunity to share Jesus with their friends
Mm,
and their teachers and their
hmm.
leaders because of the things that they're involved in. And
Yeah.
I think the second one, you said how they listen and obey their parents and how they behave, but I think also how they treat other people,
Mm,
how they're loving and accepting, and
Mm,
how they make room for other kids and bring other kids into what they're doing, I think is an incredible opportunity to share Jesus because they can talk about
hmm.
how um, there's always room for more friends. There's always room for more people to join us because there's God loves everyone and that
Yeah.
Jesus died for everyone.
I
Mm,
love that. I think that can also be a good encouragement to us as well. And I know this isn't always easy to
yeah.
hear and all isn't always easy to do, but how we treat people, it matters. How we respond to our neighbor,
Hmm.
it matters. How we respond to people when they cut us off in traffic. The guy driving next to us is still our neighbor. I have to remind myself that today. And so we have an amazing opportunity to go out and share Jesus with the people around us. We have an amazing opportunity to just not stop talking about him because we can't, because it is overflowing from us.
Hmm.
And that is our prayer for each of us as we
Hmm.
go in this week to talk to kids and preschoolers about how they can share Jesus with their neighbors. So thank you all so
Yeah.
much for joining us this week. We love being able to talk about hi-fi, and another place that you can talk about hi-fi is actually on the Facebook hi-fi group page. So if you are not a part of that, please join it. Please, we love hearing great stories. We love hearing any suggestions that you have. Please connect with us through the hi-fi Facebook page. That is the best way that we as the hi-fi publishing team can connect with you, hear your stories, hear your suggestions, and really just get to know you all as well. So we can't wait to talk to you next week. We are going to be diving into the last week about how we can tell people about Jesus as we look at how we can tell the world. So you won't want to miss that. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.